Night settles over the scaffold like a heavy, suffocating shroud. The torches crackle, casting long, dancing shadows that look like demons waiting to feed. A single man lies trembling on the wooden platform. His wrists are tied. His ankles are spread wide apart. Beneath each limb, wooden blocks are placed like crude sacrificial altars, creating a gap between his bones and the hard ground. He is not dead yet, but his body is already being measured for a death so slow, so agonizing, that it will make him beg for the fires of hell just to escape the pain of earth. The executioner steps closer. Heavy boots crush the gravel with a rhythmic, terrifying crunch. He is a silhouette carved from smoke and muscle. In his hands he holds a hammer, an iron sledgehammer, thick as a blacksmith's sin. The condemned man tries to swallow, but the fear in his throat is a solid lump that refuses to go down. He looks up. Suspended above him is a great wooden wheel. It is not a symbol of progress. It is a cartwheel stolen from fate itself, its rim polished by centuries of broken bones and spilled blood. Soon that wheel will become his prison, his trophy, and his cross. The executioner lifts the hammer to the sky. The world freezes. Then crack. A sound no human soul deserves to hear coming from their own body. The shin bursts. Bone fragments scrape against torn muscle. A scream erupts from his throat, raw and primal, but the crowd does not flinch. They came expecting music. Pain is the orchestra tonight. Crack. The hammer falls again. The other leg shatters. The bones crumble like chalk beneath the storm of iron. His limbs bend in places they were never meant to bend, twisting the human form into a grotesque question mark, a question only death can answer. Breath trembles in his chest like a trapped bird. Tears burn his eyes, mixing with the sweat of pure terror. But this is only the overture. The real performance hasn't even begun. The wheel lowers. Hands lift his broken body gently, almost lovingly, which is the cruelest touch of all. They lay him across the spokes. His arms are stretched wide, his legs woven through the wooden gaps like wet rope. The executioner ties him down with cords soaked in the blood of those who came before him. He tries to speak, to beg, to pray, but his voice breaks like everything else in his body. The wheel rises high, swinging like a pendulum between earth and sky. Below him, faces blur into a single monstrous audience. Fathers holding children, merchants eating bread, priests muttering empty prayers. Above him, the stars look away in disgust. His heart beats, but his bones cannot follow. Death will not come yet. Here, dying is not the punishment, the waiting is. And as the wind turns the wheel ever so slightly, he realizes something far worse. The hammer is coming back. Long before the wheel touched flesh, rulers knew a brutal truth. Death alone is not enough to keep order. But suffering, long, visible, unforgettable suffering, could build empires. In medieval Europe, crime was not a mistake. It was a sin against the world, and sin demanded a spectacle. From the 13th century onward, a new philosophy of justice rose like a storm. If a man dared to challenge the crown, the church, or the fragile order of life, his punishment must carve fear into the memory of every witness. The wheel became that fear. It started in Germany, where courts drafted cold mathematical instructions on how to break a human being. How many bones to shatter in what order? How long should the condemned scream before mercy visited? 12 strikes for a thief, 30 for a murderer, 40 for those the world wanted erased. The goal was precision. It was execution as choreography. The condemned was laid on the ground blocks, arranged beneath each limb, turning arms and legs into stretched bridges of terror waiting to collapse. Then the hammer descended, not to kill but to sculpt, to transform a person into a shape the wheel could claim. Some victims received the coup de grace, a final blow to the chest or throat, granting death as a last kindness. But others were lifted alive, fully conscious, and left to the mercy of sunlight, rain, and hungry birds. In France, the wheel itself turned between blows, a slow rotation of agony. Executioners aimed the hammer so bone broke cleanly between spokes. It was art, horrifying, visceral art. People gathered from miles away not merely to witness justice, but to confront their own darkest curiosity. How long can a human being survive once their skeleton is no longer inside them, but around them? Some lasted hours. Some lasted days. Their contorted bodies stood like grim signposts along the roads, bent into shapes no saint could recognize. Arms twisted like ropes. Spines coiled into letters of a language spoken only by the dying. At city gates near crossroads, where life and death shook hands, crows learned the schedule of justice. Children grew up knowing that crime did not bring a quick end, but a lingering lesson. One man, Peter Neer, a bandit whispered to practice dark magic, endured 42 bone-shattering blows, 42 cracks of thunder, 42 reasons for the world to fear his fate. His severed head was the mercy, his body was the warning. And still, the wheel spread. From the Hungarian plains to Italian marketplaces and Spanish strongholds. Wherever kings felt threatened, the wheel was built. Because power is not truly power until it forces the heart to keep beating long after hope has died. By the 19th century, voices began to call it barbaric. Bavaria banned it first. Prussia followed. The wheel vanished from law, but not from memory. The mere thought of it still twists the spine, still steals breath. Now let us return to our condemned man spinning gently against the night sky. The wheel begins its true work. The hammer lifts one more time. What comes next is agony slowed to the speed of eternity. The wheel was once a symbol of harvest, a simple tool meant to carry wheat and bread. But somewhere, someone decided it could carry death just as well. The wheel used for breaking was not the fragile circle that rolled along muddy paths. It was reforged for cruelty. A perfect circle of oak, thick spokes rising like ribs from a spine. Iron studs hammered along the rim, not for decoration, but for domination. The diameter was large enough to stretch the human body into its longest, most helpless silhouette. Some wheels towered over grown men, their shadows falling like gravestones in the morning light. Every spoke was a weapon. Every gap between them, a place where bone could fold. It did not kill, it corrected. It twisted the human form back into clay, raw and breakable. The executioner understood physics well. The body is strong when supported. It becomes fragile when suspended. So the condemned was tied loosely, just enough ropes to lift them, but never enough to protect a limb. One tug on the wheel and gravity itself joined the act of breaking. The wooden blocks placed beneath arms and legs served one purpose: elevation. To raise bone above flesh like a target on display, so the hammer could find its path cleanly. Crack. Strike the shin first. The tendon snaps like a bowstring pulled too far. Crack. The forearm. A bloom of agony blossoms beneath the skin, turning purple and black instantly. The wheel rotates a slow, deliberate spin, adjusting angles, so every blow shatters a new section of the skeleton. The body becomes a map, and the executioner traces each road with iron certainty. When the breaking is done, the body is no longer a body. It is rope and pulp and trembling ruin. This is when the wheel transforms from instrument to monument. The executioner raises it upright on a tall pole. The condemned hangs like a grotesque marionette, limbs dangling in impossible directions. Each breath is a rebellion against gravity. Sometimes the wheel was mounted horizontally on a stake, turning the victim into a human banquet table for the sky. Vultures perched nearby. Flies claimed the open wounds. The wind swung the corpse like a pendulum marking time. A knight, once armored in pride, now naked in misery. A thief, once quick with his hands, now unable to lift a single finger. A rebel, once loud with defiance, now silent but still breathing. The wheel demanded patience. It was a slow eater. It devoured the living millimeter by millimeter. And it was versatile in horror. Sometimes a mercy stroke came at the end, a final smash to the chest, sending ribs into lungs. Blunt execution disguised as compassion. Other times, the wheel itself finished the job. Blood loss, thirst organs collapsing within their broken cage. The cruelest deaths were quiet ones. No last scream, only a slow expansion of the eyes as the world turned upside down and slipped away. The wheel was not just a device, it was a philosophy. It believed pain should have shaped terror, should have design, and death should be earned. And every spectator who watched learned the lesson carved into wood: this is what happens when you defy power. Because bones can break, but authority must never. Yet, while the wheel was a masterpiece of structural torment, its true horror was not the wood or the iron. It was what happened to a soul that realized it could not die fast enough. This is where our condemned man now finds himself. He still breathes. Pain arrives in waves, but on the wheel it becomes a tide rising, relentless, infinite. The first hour is shock. The mind tries to deny what the bones already know. Limbs reduced to fragments. Flesh draped over failure. He tries to move, but the attempt alone sends lightning screaming through every nerve. His body twists, but only in the direction the wheel demands. Night comes. The crowd leaves. Justice is satisfied, but the wheel hungers still. The cold sets in. He shakes, and the muscles spasm, folding broken bones deeper into raw flesh. A groan forces its way up his throat. It doesn't sound human anymore. The stars witness everything but offer nothing. He stares into the darkness below his feet, hears distant dogs barking, feels his consciousness flicker like a candle in the wind. Then a new terror rises. He wakes again. He had drifted, but his body refused to die while he slept. The wheel ensures awareness. It forces its victims to feel every moment twice. Bones shift during the night, gravity pulling them into grotesque rearrangements. Sometimes the skin tears open and white bone peeks through the red ruin. Crows land nearby. One hops closer, tilts its head. It knows a feast when it sees one. A single peck sharp and casual. The victim tries to jerk away, but the wheel allows only suffering. Never escape. The bird pulls something soft from a torn limb. A small victory for nature. The man's scream breaks the night again. It echoes between buildings, but strangers pretend they don't hear. Eventually, his voice fractures just like everything else. The wheel does not just break bodies, it breaks belief. And when belief collapses, the soul follows. Soon even death will feel like a mercy too generous to expect.